The night hung with an unusual brilliance over the capital's sky. The air carried a warm breeze, though the city had long sunk into the shadows of night. Inside the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Grand Hotel, the world seemed repolished, crafted from light, violin notes, and the soft whisper of silk gliding across marble floors. Above, crystal chandeliers sparkled like stars that refused to sleep. Round tables were set to perfection, white linens, candles glowing in their centers, and golden champagne reflecting shards of light from above. The guests walked with practiced confidence, wrapped in haute couture, bodies that were used to adoration. They weren't just present, they ruled the space with presence honed over years. The annual charity gala wasn't merely a night of giving. It was a stage, for the powerful to flaunt their strength, for the aspiring to mingle, and for the renowned to sit and be studied. And in a quiet corner, away from the spotlight yet not beyond notice, sat a young man with soft dark hair, dressed in a classic black suit with no flamboyant embellishments. No logos, no glittering jewelry, just him, and the silence that cloaked him. It was Jungkook, a member of BTS, a name that had become nearly synonymous with modern music history. He was 26, but his eyes bore decades. He wasn't smiling, but not solemn either. He wasn't speaking, but far from mute. He simply was, and in some unspoken way, his presence rewrote the gravity around him. The invitation had come from an old friend, a friend from a world far from the spotlight, where people were not headlines, but beating hearts. And so he came, not to be seen, but to see. Classical music blanketed the air like a soft fog. Conversations crossed in midair, peppered with polite laughter. But beneath the perfection, there was a silent undercurrent, an anticipation moving unseen, like a storm shaping its own sky. For tonight, there was another special guest. A journalist, renowned, loved and feared in the same breath. Their name had been announced weeks earlier, welcomed with curiosity and veiled concern. They were known to be sharp, brilliant, and never let anyone walk away without a subtle bruise from their words. Their speech tonight was promised to shake perspectives. And as the host introduced them, the room held its breath. They stepped onto the stage with the confidence of a maestro. Sleek black suit, a smile that had already claimed the night before the first word was spoken. Applause followed, polite, but guarded. Everyone waited for the inevitable explosion. And it came. Slowly. They opened with lightness. Jokes about Jakarta's infamous traffic, anecdotes about past gala mishaps, laughter rippled like spilled wine. But slowly, their tone shifted. From light to sharp, from warm to biting, music and culture became the target. Then, without warning, they mentioned the name that made hearts pause. BTS. With a smile that lacked sincerity, they hinted the world may have crowned them too quickly. Had they truly changed music, or merely offered comforting, easy-listening pop? Laughter, awkward, small, increasingly choked, echoed. Then, the name, Jungkook. Imagine, they said, being part of something that big. Was he truly happy, or just smiling because the cameras demanded it? Hundreds of eyes began shifting, one by one, to the calm figure in the corner. Jungkook didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't avert his gaze. He only remained still, but his stillness wrapped the entire room in invisible threads. A young man, thrust into an uninvited spotlight, became the gravitational center of the night. And that silence began to sting. The journalist smiled, as if daring. But it faltered. No laughter came, no nods of support, only silence. Then, Jungkook rose, slowly, with a posture that knew no fear. The sound of his chair scraping back became the only sound in the room. He didn't smile, he didn't rage, he didn't rush, he simply walked. His steps were steady, his presence immutable. The journalist tensed, the podium suddenly a barrier. And when Jungkook reached the edge of the stage, he looked. Not piercingly, not judgmentally, just looked. With calm, with honesty, with a courage that didn't need to be loud. Then he spoke. His voice didn't rise, but every word etched itself into the air. He didn't defend. He didn't attack. He merely explained that behind stories sold to the world, there are people who cannot be caged in one narrative. That smiles are not always masks, and silence is not weakness. He spoke of respect, of burdens of expectation, of how easy it is to craft stories from the outside, without ever understanding the wounds and journeys of another. And those words were not a speech. They were a prayer. When he finished, there was no applause, no cheers, because the room had been silenced by a truth too simple and too undeniable. The journalist looked down. The guests sat frozen, and Jungkook, after a quiet pause, turned and walked back to his seat. Silence had been his weapon, elegance, his strength. And that night, in the grandest ballroom of the city, the world witnessed something greater than chandeliers or couture. They witnessed greatness born from the courage to not strike back in anger. They witnessed a man who chose to speak only after his silence had been heard. And for that night, and perhaps forever, they would not forget.